The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's November 1st, and I hope that everybody had a happy and safe Halloween last night. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a little while, but thrilled to be here with you for the next 2 hours live. We already have gremlins on board this morning, so it promises to be a very interesting show today. Doesn't it feel like everything is a little different today? And I know next week everything is going to feel that much more different because for a lot of us we're going to have a time change with the turning clocks, spring ahead, fall back. We're turning them back. You know, we just ride with it. The thing that I know now is that if it's that wonky for us when things are a little bit different, just a little bit different, what must it be like for our kids when they don't understand what's happening and things change a lot? So something to keep in mind in this next week as we turn the clocks, change them, and everything becomes a little different because we're officially, even here in Southern California, it's full-on fall now, right? And yes, we can hear it. It definitely is the holiday treadmill that has started, right? We're going to talk about Halloween and all those things and getting ready for more of the holidays later on in the show. But I'd like to remind you guys that this whole show is meant to be interactive. We so welcome your input, your questions, your suggestions. We want to hear from you, and we have a bunch of questions that have come in that I'm hoping to get to today. It doesn't matter to us whether you are a parent-teacher practitioner who is working with an individual on the spectrum and you're hoping to get some clues and tips and secrets for being able to get to that progress in a more efficient and effective way, or you yourself are on the autism spectrum and you've got some questions about how can I do some of the things that I'm wanting to do. We want to support all of you in this journey. We know that this is a big, beautiful spectrum that is all sizes, colors, flavors, right? But our hope and desire is to be that resource to kind of this, I always think of it as a switchboard, and I'm the switchboard operator. We want to hook you up to things that are going to help you get plugged in to what you need. And I always like to remind you guys at the top of the show to interact with us. So Emily's going to show you some of the ways that you can interact, lots of different ways, because we know you have different methods and different times that are available. While she's showing you, I want to remind you www.autism-live.com. That's sort of Autism Live Central, right? That's our web page. You can go there and you see the computer screen. You can click on that and watch the live show if it's the proper time. We're 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States. We're from 10 to noon Pacific Time, and I hope you'll be able to do the math wherever you are in the world. And you can also watch the most recent episode there and scroll through some of the different recent episodes if you want to watch there. The other great thing about being on autism-live.com is that there's a white box next to that computer screen, and when you go there, you can type whatever you want in there, hit enter, and it shows up magically here on our screen. That way we have an interactive ability, I can't talk today, the ability to interact with you in real time if you're doing it during the live show, or if you're watching and you're seeing something and it's 2 o'clock in the morning where you are, you can type in, hit enter, and it's here available for us during the next live show. So that's a really cool thing. It's free. There's no cost for it. There's no lengthy login. In fact, there's no login at all. Nobody asks for a credit card, and you can maintain your complete anonymity if you choose, or you can give us more information that I can edit out before showing the audience at home, and we can get back to you. So however that works for you is grand. I like to remind you also at the top of the show that I am not an expert in autism. I am a mom. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and he's now 10 and doing so well because we got access to services and we got access to information. Remember that knowledge is power on this journey. And so often, even now, I feel like I've learned a lot, but there's so much more to learn. Somebody says, oh, well, do you know about this and so? No, I had no idea about that. And it can be life-changing. Sometimes it's the funding that you need to make something possible. Sometimes it's just knowing who is the person who makes the decisions about how many hours of intervention your child gets. But if you don't know, if you don't even know the questions to ask, it's really difficult. So I'm not an expert, but I have a passion for making sure that you guys get the information that you need, because I know what a difference it made in my life and what a difference it made in my son's life. And I think that you all deserve that. We all do, right? And our kids deserve that level. We want to eventually level the playing field, but they deserve that level of interest in getting them help, because there is all kinds of hope. All right. So in any case, we have lots to talk about today and a lot of things that you guys have written in that I can't wait to get to. But we like to start every show with something we call the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We introduce it to you and then give you the actual definition and a working definition, because sometimes the actual definition is something that just makes you want to pull your hair out and run screaming down the street. I remember one of the first times that I started, because at first I was like, I don't want to participate in your crazy jargon. I said it to some expert. I was like, if you can't find the way to explain it to me in plain English, then we're going to have a problem, right? I was that. But then I said, okay, I got to start to learn these things. And I took out an actual physical dictionary and started looking terms up. Not helpful. Then I went online and started looking at different places online and would think, it's going to be the rest of my life because I don't understand the definition. What am I going to do? So we give you a working definition too, hopefully something that makes a little bit more sense with what you've got going on today. So our term today is something that we talk about a lot on the show. A lot of our experts will bring it up when they're answering your questions. The word is shaping. And this is a term that it's one of these great terms because you think, well, I know what shaping is. I've taken an art class or, I have an idea of what that is, but what has it got to do with autism? Let's shed a little light. So let's go first to our actual definition, which comes to us today from Wikipedia. I wanted to leave it exactly as it is so that you can see sometimes how frustrating it is. So shaping, a conditioning paradigm used primarily in the experimental analysis of behavior. The method used is differential reinforcement of successive approximations. Great. Now we don't need to know anything more, right? This is one of those definitions that way back when would have made me so angry. I will tell you that I understand this definition now and I like it better than the working definition because I get all the other terms in it. I don't know when that happened, but at some time it happened. But if you don't understand this, bless you, many, many years I did not understand this. But let's take a look at what this might mean for you in a working definition. It's a teaching technique used to teach an unknown skill. The individual is rewarded for successful approximation of a target skill. Gradually, the reinforcement is given only as the approximation gets closer to the target skill. I don't like this definition because it really doesn't work unless you give an example. So let's say, because we talked earlier this week about a task analysis, let's say that you're wanting to shape up how your child brushes their teeth, because this is something that at some point we're all going to want to work on, right? So it's got lots of different skills in it that a child needs to do, and we're going to teach each one of those in a chain. We're going to teach, okay, first you're going to turn on the water and then we're going to put the toothpaste on, and we're going to do all the other parts in the chain for the child. But the actual brushing the teeth is something we're going to want to shape, right? Because we understand that a 4-year-old is not going to do this in a way that's really, really productive. But so what do? Just not have the 4-year-old even try? That's not going to really work, right? We're going to want to chain the behavior a little bit, and we're going to want to make sure that we do the main portion of the brushing for the 4-year-old or the 10-year-old or the 22-year-old who isn't able to get it done themselves, but we want to be shaping it so at least a portion of the toothbrushing we're going to ask the child to do themselves. And even when children are 2, they practice and maybe don't even put any toothpaste on the toothbrush, but have them do it around their mouth, and we go, yay, you're brushing your teeth, that's wonderful, good job, and then we'll finish up the job, right? So over time, we very gradually, we're not, if the 4-year-old is just sticking the toothbrush in their mouth, we're no longer going to go, yay, good job, you're brushing your teeth. We're going to require them to do some sort of a movement, and it may be at 4 that we have them do up and down or side to side, because doing the circular motion that you need to do to brush the teeth may be too hard for a particular 4-year-old, maybe too hard for a particular 10-year-old, right? But the main thing is that we're finding some, we call it the approximation. They're doing something towards the direction of getting it right, and we're going to reinforce that. But what happens is we keep moving the goalpost further away. That's that differential reinforcement, that we're no longer going to just reward it when they stick the toothbrush in their mouth. We're only going to reward it when the toothbrush is moving now. Great. And then maybe when they're 5, depending on the child, right? There's no absolute here. You're going to do it when it's right for the child. We're going to start to, teach that circular motion, and we're going to start to reinforce that. Oh, I love how you're making circles with that toothbrush. Oh my goodness, that's fabulous. And give them some sort of paycheck for it, whether it's just praise or, oh, if you do the circles with your toothbrush, then we're going to give you 10 more minutes of reading in bed or 10 more minutes on the iPad, right? So we're really moving that goalpost further and further along, and this is how we shape the behavior, so that by the time the child is 7 or by the time the child is 12, and for every child it's going to be different, right? Because every child's going to have different skill sets starting, and every child is going to have different priorities. But at some point we're always getting closer and closer to the behavior that we want, and some point we're at the behavior, and then we can start to fade everything else so that the child becomes an adult and is brushing their own teeth and brushing it properly, and doesn't have to have a cheering team standing there doing it. So that's what shaping is, taking a behavior and sort of shaping it for what it is. We do this all the time in life with all of our kids. A lot of times I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think as autism parents, when we don't see a skill developing, we get discouraged, and so we'll focus on other things. That's not wrong, right? But because we have priorities in different areas. But if we have this in mind, wait a second, at one point I was doing this shaping behavior. It's not completely foreign to us. Nobody ever taught a song without using shaping. I think about when I'm teaching a song to my son, even when we taught the ABCs, we would teach, and I would do a lot of it, right? I would do A, B, C, D, and then I would pause and let him fill in the E. And maybe his E didn't even sound like an E to begin with, but if he just made a noise, I would go, yay, right? And eventually that noise would become, singing, maybe on key, maybe not, and a E closer to an E, we reward that. There's a great TED Talk that we've played several times before on the show that demonstrates a researcher who, from the day his baby came home, he had his whole home wired for sound and cameras, and they documented every single moment of this child's first 5 years, I believe. And then they went through and did a bunch of research on it and took the shaping of the word water, and they edited it down every time this child had ever said the word water up until when he said water. And you can hear in the beginning that he was saying la, right? Not even close to water. And then it became wa wa ga ga ba ba da ba, right? And you hear all the different approximations before he gets to water. fascinating, right? And that's a completely neurotypical developing child. So shaping is very much something that I know you already do. And I want to encourage you to look at it now in a different way and go, okay, so how can I shape up a behavior with my child? It really means getting in there and giving that reinforcement along the way. It does work. It's a great, great technique for teaching something that's complicated and that's going to take a long time to do. So there's shaping, right? Shape that behavior up. And we could do that with almost anything. All right, we always have a question of the day for you, and we will find some time later on today to check in with you about this. We want to know what time of day is the most frustrating for you. And by the way, you can answer this from any angle that you want. It could be what time of day is just the most frustrating for you. It could be what time of day is the most frustrating for you in relationship to your child. But we want to know what time of day is hardest. I can tell you right now that for me, the hardest time of the day is nighttime because I'm exhausted and I feel like the rest of the world doesn't get it. That I'm standing there trying to explain to my husband and my son about how I am not interested in whatever it is that they're talking about. I just want them to leave me alone. I want my son to go to bed and go to sleep, and I want my husband to act as if he's not home. I get to that point, right? And we're trying some different things at home, and we have been trying some different things at home because it's not good to just be frustrated, right? And part of what I'm doing is backing it up and getting all the things that need to get done earlier in the evening so that when I hit that wall, there's less that needs to be done. What a concept, right? But we want to hear from you. What's the most frustrating time of the day for you? And maybe we can troubleshoot how we can all get these frustrating moments to be a little smoother. I don't think it's ever going to be easy, right? But it gets easier. And that's progress. We love progress. So write into us on Facebook. Tell us what the most frustrating time of day is, and we will get time to check in on that a little bit later. Okay, we always have a topic of the week, and our topic in this very short week has been learning through observation. This is really pivotal for all of our kids. When you stop and think about it, we want to get it to the point where our very little kids begin to work on this. And we talked the other day about how this can start even with the idea of teaching joint attention, which is very important. So when you're looking at something and the other individual is looking at something, and then you look at each other to get reactions, which is going to help with perspective taking, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit later on today. This up until, think about a college age person who walks into a room of peers and isn't sure what to do. And there's no rule book and there's no therapist there. How do I know how to interact? And the idea of learning through observation, looking and seeing, okay, well, what is everybody else doing? They're standing and talking in groups of 3s. So maybe I'll find a group of 2 and walk over there and see if I can get into that conversation. All the things that can be learned through observation. And unfortunately, I wish it wasn't this way, but right now, especially here in the United States, our teaching methods are really based on learning through observation. Many, many years ago, there was a lot more hands-on, and I know it's really important for us, for our kids who are on the autism spectrum, to give them, who am I kidding? It's important for all of our kids to give them that hands-on experiential learning, but they've got to be able to learn through observation. It is the way the system is set up right now, and they're not going to be successful in a school setting unless they have at least a component of learning through observation. And it is, once it's there, it's very exciting what our kids can learn and where they can learn from in this age of technology. So we're going to continue to talk about that today and some of the different things that we have going on today. I gave Emily late notice, so some of this is going to change. We will be doing our funding tip today. We won't, unfortunately, be having Shan Els from the Autism Daily Newscast with us today, but we will be covering an Autism Daily Newscast story today, and then we will have her on a future date. And we will have Dr. Jonathon Tarbox with us in the second hour, and we're going to be talking about perspective taking with him. I've got some questions about how we teach perspective taking to people who are not on the spectrum. So we're going to be asking, and we've got a lot of questions on board as well that you guys have been writing in that we're going to be asking Dr. Jonathon Tarbox. So all of that and so much more, I'm hoping to squeeze in a stress tip. Now that we haven't been doing a show on Mondays because we've been doing a lot of other production on Mondays, we haven't been doing our stress tip. So hopefully we'll have time for that as well today, because it's the holiday season. We got to get that on. We got to get our anti-stress suit on. All right, this and much, much more, including your questions after these messages. Stick with us.
Hi everyone! Thanksgiving is fast approaching, and we thought it'd be really fun to teach you a gluten-free stuffing recipe with help from Breads from Anna. Now this is a 2-day recipe, and so day 1 we're going to make this bread. Here's what you're going to need. 1 package of Breads from Anna bread mix, 1 packet of active dry yeast, 3 eggs, 1 tablespoon apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons sugar, 1/4 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of warm water, 1 teaspoon ground sage, thyme, rosemary, 1 tablespoon of dried parsley, and then a pinch of tarragon, onion powder, marjoram, and garlic powder. On day 2, when we put the stuffing together, here's what you'll be needing. 6 tablespoons of butter, 1/2 bulb of fennel, 1 chopped onion, 2 chopped carrots, 1/2 cup of gluten-free chicken broth, 1 teaspoon of ground sage, thyme, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and pepper. All right, step 1, we're going to dissolve our sugar into our water. And then we're going to go ahead and add our active yeast. We're going to dissolve all these together. So we're going to just set this aside. Now we're going to take our bread mix right on over to our mixer. So first things first, we're going to put all our liquids together before we add in our dry bread mix. We're putting in 3 eggs, our oil, apple cider vinegar, water, and our water, yeast, sugar mixture. We're going to blend these all together. So once our liquids are all mixed together, we're going to go ahead and add our bread mix. We're also going to add all of our spices now. Okay, now that our bread's been mixed, we're going to spoon this into a bread dish and we're going to let it rise for about an hour. Okay, so now that we've let this rise for about an hour, we're going to bake it at 375 for another hour. All right, it's been an hour, so let's grab our bread out of the oven. We're going to let this cool for a little bit, and then we're going to actually cube the bread, and we're going to toast it in the oven just a little bit longer to dry it out so that when we add it to the vegetables, it'll make a really great stuffing. So as you can see, we've toasted our little breads here in the oven, and now what we're going to do is saute some of these vegetables so that we can mix it in with the bread and make our final stuffing combination. So we'll start with the butter. So we're going to start with our onions so that we can make sure these are good and cooked before we add the other vegetables. They cook a little bit longer. Okay, those are looking pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and add our fennel, our carrots, our garlic, and then all our spices. So you're going to want to cook this until the carrots especially are nice and soft. Our vegetables are pretty soft here, so what we're going to do is go ahead and mix this with our bread. We're also going to go ahead now and add our 1/2 cup of broth. So once these are mixed together, we're going to go ahead and pour it into our greased baking dish, and we're going to bake it an additional 20 minutes at 350 degrees. Alright. Okay, I think it's ready. Da-da-da. All right, and we can add a little garnish here. Perfect, and it's ready for Thanksgiving dinner. To learn how you can win some breads from Anna, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autism-live. Until next time, happy holidays.
Welcome back. What a wonderful segment. I love that recipe. Can't wait to try it. Emily did an awesome job, and we love Breads from Anna. Now you see in the background here that we're going to be talking about funding, because it's Funding Friday. Somebody had written in a question, and it went hand in hand with what I had planned to talk about today, that they said, how do I get respite? Well, and a lot of you will write in and say, how do I get funding for X, Y, or Z? And here's the thing about this, is that there's a different answer depending on where you are. For instance, if you are in California, there is something called the regional centers, which were set up by something called the Lanternman Act. And it makes it possible in the state of California that if you have an individual who has been diagnosed with autism, then you become a lifelong client and you can go to the regional center and ask for certain services. And you think, wow, that is totally incredible. But even in the state of California, there are families who don't know all the things that are available to them. They did a recent article, I guess it's been about a year now, that the Los Angeles Times did a 5-part series on autism, and in one of the segments, they just showed a map and talked about the disparity between the different regional centers, because they're set up in different places around the state, and talked about what the average dollar amount per client was being received for each one of these different areas. And what you saw was that there might be a place in one community where the average of what the client was getting that came to the regional center was quite high, and then in another area it was quite low. And really the only thing that was separating those two clients, except for location and miles, was the ability to know what they could ask for. So you have to start to do a little bit of research about what is available to me and what can I ask for. And this is why I always suggest to you guys, get a local support group and get a more global support group, because this is where you're going to find out how people get this done. If I hadn't been a part of a TACA group in my area, I wouldn't have known that I could get respite from the regional center and have it paid for in total. In total. You know, and it's on a sliding scale financially, but when we were doing therapy, we qualified for it 100%. I wouldn't even have known how much to ask for if I hadn't had that local support group. I was thinking how amazing it would be if we could have 3 hours of respite a month. I just thought that was incredible. If there was 3 hours a month where I could go and do something, or my husband and I could go on a date, literally, I thought that would be life-changing, right? Because it could be. And what I found out was that we could qualify for significantly more than that. But I wouldn't have known if I hadn't talked to parents in my local support group. I wouldn't have known that the regional center offered it. It wasn't as though my regional center representative, these are people who are overworked, underpaid, and they're not going to think of everything, right? They have so many different clients. It's likely that they just won't bring it up. But if you bring it up, they go, yes, that's available to you. So you got to know which question to ask. So ask your local support group, how do you get funding for respite? How have you managed to pay for it? What did you do with the regional center? Or in different states, it's different things. Because, in New York, you have something that's close to the regional center, but there's a different name for it. I know in New Jersey, they have a different system. Each of the individual states, and then in different countries, we're talking about a whole other thing. But ask your local support group. It may be, and bless you, you may be the first person in your area that's asking the question. But if you start the support group, at some point, somebody's going to learn something that you didn't know, and it'll pay itself back. Ask the question. Go on your local support group. How do you find a local support group? Go to Facebook, go to Cafe Mom, go to Yahoo groups, go to Google groups, and put in autism and the area that you live in. If you're just outside of a big city, you can put in both your individual area, your suburb, and the big city. I guarantee you'll find a lot. For those of you who are in more remote areas, get creative with what you put in there, but eventually I think you'll find something. Each state has at least one support group. And once you figure that out, if you see that, oh, you're the person, what I'm wanting to do eventually here at Autism Live is to find at least one parent who's hooked in each state and in each country that we're broadcasting in, so that if somebody has a question in that state, we can kind of refer them and say, hey, you know who our New Jersey contact is? Give this person an email and they can hook you up. Another place to look for local support groups, Autism Society there's Autism Society of Los Angeles, there's Autism Society of Southern California, there's Autism Society of Chicago. They're all over the place. You can look there too. And I would encourage you to go to TACA, TACAnow.org, see if there is a group near you. And you can always go to Autism Speaks and go to their resources tab, plug in your state and then your zip code, and it will give you a list of things and how far away they are to you. And sometimes they list the support groups there. So take a look at all those resources and ask your individual funding questions there. Ask what's available, what are you guys getting, and how did you get it? Don't be afraid to ask people, how did you make that happen? I know for us as a family, if we hadn't asked that question, I don't know what I would be doing, but it certainly wouldn't be sitting here talking about how great my son is doing. So don't reinvent that wheel. Get hooked up to that local support group. Find out. I'm pretty sure that in most states there are at least some resources. We've called a couple of states out in the past here on the show and said, I'm thinking of Utah, that I said not too long ago, oh, Utah, it's offensive how few services there are. And I don't pretend that it's because we said it, but I think a group of parents have lobbied, and there are some amazing resources now that have become available just recently in Utah, so that families can get access to things like ABA and respite and things like that. So ask on a regular basis, because the playing field keeps changing. But if you don't ask, you won't know. And even just asking another parent, what do I need to ask? What do I need? Parents who've been there and done that love to pay it forward. They really do. And I have yet to meet the autism parent that I haven't really liked. So you might make a friend for life. Check it out. And get the funding you need. Get some respite. It really is life-changing. We're going to take a break and come back after these messages.
Hi, it's Lisa Ackerman back for What's Left. I got a nice guest with me today.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
We're going to make some healthy banana nut bread with no eggs. Maybe what you could do, Kristen, I'm going to add the flour.
Okay.
If you can get the bananas ready just by mashing them for me. So I'm going to go ahead and add our flour. Here's 1 cup of my all-purpose flour. I'm going to go ahead and add my baking soda and my salt and my xanthan gum. A half teaspoon of the salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and xanthan gum. Xanthan gum is great, but you can also use gar gum. We can use flaxseed meal if we want to use a different binder. Remember, this is what helps keep your gluten-free flour held together. We're going to also add 1 cup of our organic cane sugar. There's a lot of variations on this as well. I can use maple syrup and honey and cook with it. That's a great way to go, but be careful, you may need to add some more flour into the mix. How are you doing, monkey?
I think
Perfect!
I can now say I officially mashed bananas.
You mashed the monkey bananas. So I'll go ahead and take your mashed monkey banana. Thank you very much. All we did, Kristen, lovely Vanna White, is mash up the bananas, getting ready to go for our dessert. So let's go ahead and add egg replacers. We've gotten a lot of feedback from y'all about not using eggs, and I know eggs are a big issue. So we talked about this. We're going to use a little flaxseed meal and arrowroot starch, and I love these, but whenever we use a dry ingredient, and an egg has a lot more moisture than these.
Yeah.
So we want to be a little kind and maybe add a little water.
Okay.
Or more fruit, or a coconut milk or something along those lines. So for this recipe, it calls for 2 eggs. So I'm actually going to use 1 teaspoon of each of these Look at me using measuring devices. And add that into my mix, and that will be in place of any eggs that you would want in that recipe. Next up is the cinnamon and the nutmeg. This gives it the yum. Now, for kids who are really sensitive to different spices, you may want to go a little lighter on these. So for nutmeg, this calls for 1/8 of a teaspoon, so you really want to go light on the nutmeg. In fact, that's one you could probably cut back a little bit for kids who are really sensitive to smell or taste. And cinnamon, I love cinnamon. Did you know cinnamon has some antibacterial properties?
Yeah.
I love this stuff. So anytime I can add cinnamon to whatever, if your kid tolerates it, it's a great antibacterial. So I love that stuff. If you have a nut allergy, forget the nuts. But these are the chopped walnuts per the recipe. This is a 1/2 cup of chopped walnuts, and I've got my lemon zest. And again, I love lemon zest. My son has grown to love it as I cook for him more often. And then the last thing that we're going to add here in our recipe is the 1/2 cup oil. Thanks, Dana White.
You're welcome.
We'll go ahead. I use grapeseed. You can also use the different Earth Balance soy-free margarine melted.
Oh, okay.
That would be great. That gives a good texture. Awesome. Our mix is ready to go, Kristen. I'm going to put a little oil on the pan. And I love the consistency. Like you were saying, this looks a little bit like a thick pancake mix. Are you ready?
I think so. I just want to make sure I'm not the one that doesn't make it come out.
So again, it is a bit of a thicker texture. I'm going to go ahead and grab as much as I can out of my little mixing pan here. So let's go ahead and put this in the oven, 350 degrees for about 40 to 50 minutes, depending upon your oven and how long you want it to cook.
Ooh.
And this is what the finished product looks like. Yum!
Looks
so
yummy.
For me, this is probably one of the most nutritious, fun things that I can eat. I'm going to have you try some so you can tell me what you think.
I would be happy to be the guinea pig.
Such
Ooh,
a
it
great
smells
texture.
so good.
So there you go.
Yummy.
I know. But go ahead and give it a shot and tell me what you think.
Let me see. That was really good.
Yeah,
It's
give me some
moist
of that.
too.
Thank you for joining us here at Autism Live. We've got a great, wonderful snack or breakfast that we can serve up for our kids. That's healthy, ready to go. Kristen, thanks for joining me
Thank
this
you for
time.
having me.
Love
That was
having you
fun.
here. And we'll see you next time at Autism Live. What's left? If you have any questions, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com or hit us up on Facebook, facebook.com/autismlive. And if you need more recipes while we're in between shows, go off to the TACA website, tacanow.org. Click on gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free recipes and have a ball. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I just want to say, fabulous, fabulous segment, and we love Lisa Ackerman, and she is one of those uber, super autism moms, founder of TACA. Fabulous recipe. But for those of us who don't have time, you saw that the Breads from Anna mix was there. Fabulous, looks exactly like that, and it takes you 5 seconds to make it and put it in the oven, and it's amazing. Knock your socks off. And you can get Breads from Anna at most grocery stores now. Even regular grocery stores carry it. It is amazing. The banana bread is... It should be illegal. The banana bread and the pumpkin bread, you must get these mixes. When we went GFCF, you still need to take things when you go to a brunch or something and you want to take something that everybody else can have, but that you can have and that your child can have. And we always took Breads from Anna. Nobody even knew it was gluten-free, and they would go, "Oh, this is the most fabulous pumpkin bread. Where did you get this?" "Oh, I made it." Yes, it's that good, and no one knew that it was gluten-free. So we have an expression in my home, it's hurt me good, because it just like hurts. It's so good. It's phenomenal, and it's a mix, and all you have to have are eggs and I think a little bit of oil to put in it, and you have to have the bananas and the pumpkin. That's true. And by the way, it doesn't have sugar in it, it doesn't have yeast in it, it has honey granules in it. Oh my goodness, really good stuff. fabulous for Thanksgiving. In any case, we now on the show every day, we like to feature something from the Autism Daily Newscast. So our story today from the Autism Daily Newscast is a feel-good story. It's Friday, so we like our Funding Fridays and our feel-good Fridays. Our story is about an artist, a young man on the autism spectrum who is remarkable and helping to raise money. The title of this piece is Autistic Artist Grant Meniere Collages Recycled Puzzle Pieces. And it's a profile in brief, one of their new series on the Autism Daily Newscast talking about real-life heroes. So Grant Meniere is an 18-year-old young man who is using his talent as an artist to fundraise for the school that made a difference for him. Westview School in Houston is a private school for autistic children where his mother works and he attends thanks to the donations of friends, family, and scholarship money. When he was 4, his mother, Julie Coy Meniere, began a job at the Westview School and immediately recognized the signs of autism in her son. Within a year, he was diagnosed with high-functioning autism or Asperger's syndrome. She says, I was fortunate to work there and learn about autism and was blessed to have friends and total strangers donate money on Grant's behalf for his education. Coy Meniere believes that her son may be the only artist whose main medium is the paper that he peels off of cardboard puzzle pieces. She says, instead of toys, he wanted paper. We took a repetitive behavior, tearing paper, that drove a lot of people crazy and made it into a business. A lot of autistic kids can have a lot of quirky behaviors, and we needed to redirect that behavior because of its message. It's a gift. 2 pieces of Meniere's work have made their way to Washington, D.C. He won the high school congressional art competition for the 8th District of Texas, and the prize was having one of his pieces hanging in a Capitol building for a year. At a recent fundraiser, one piece of art was bought by 4 senators. Meniere says, whenever I'm doing my artwork, I feel relaxed, like meditation. I have anxiety and challenges because I'm autistic. Doing art helps me relax, and it's fun. And you can go on to their website, the autismdailynewscast.com, and you can see some examples of his work. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful story about taking something that someone else may view as being a problem, a challenge, and using it to not only create art, but to now fundraise for the school that was able to fundraise for him. Beautiful, beautiful story. These and other stories, breaking news in the autism community, are available at www.autismdailynewscast.com. We'll be right back after these messages.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, you know, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What
yes.
did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and then they informed me that he had received a grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle. Without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. We underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm just going through some of the questions that you guys have written in. And I wanted to, as a parent, I will probably ask Dr. Tarbox this as a clinician later on, but I wanted to address this a little bit as a parent. Somebody wrote in the other day and said, "Hello, Shannon, this is very interesting. My daughter recently, because we are working on eye contact, just like Jack Riley, the little boy in the A word, suddenly when someone asks, 'Look at me,' she will tilt her head a little down, raise her eyebrows up, and look at you with effort. She is starting vision therapy this week. I just saw Jack Riley doing the exact same thing when the therapist asked, 'Look at me.' Is this common, and is it something we can do to fix this? I feel sorry when she does this because I know it's way of an effort. What should we do? Thank you for everything." I think it is very common. I can tell you that my son still has issues with eye contact. He can make great eye contact, but it's still not always his preferred method of doing things. And I know from talking to my son, who is verbal enough now to describe it, and from talking to many other individuals on the autism spectrum, they describe it, it's almost the phrase that I've heard several people use is that it can be very hot, or even sometimes they'll describe it as painful. Now, when you further delve into it and talk about painful, what do you mean? Like, do you get a shooting pain? They'll talk about that sometimes it's upsetting to the stomach. And so that it's not actual pain. I just want to bring, that clear. But I'm trying to remember who it was that described it to me and said, think about how intense a moment can be. And that if you're, you know how sometimes you're having like intense eye contact with somebody and it's somebody who's like really, you feel like your soul is being pierced. That this is a strange example to think of, but I remember the first time I ever saw U2 in concert a million years ago when they were young and I was young. And I would say if you've ever seen them in concert, Bono is somebody who makes intense eye contact. Like that man makes eye contact with you, reaches in, rearranges your liver while he's in there, right? You know, and he makes eye contact with people when he's on the stage. And I've heard several people describe going to see them in concert and saying, "I swore he made eye contact with me." And when I saw him, it was a very small venue, and he did make eye contact, and I got to meet him afterwards, and I was overwhelmed by the eye contact that he makes. And there are other people that I've met in my life that have that ability too. They like pierce your soul. And that I remember feeling uncomfortable, that it was not completely unpleasurable, but you know, it was intense. And so a lot of times our individuals on the spectrum talk about that it's like sensory, so intense, it's like it blows circuits, that it feels hot when they're making eye contact with somebody, because it's very intimate. So there is that aspect of it, that it can be very difficult. For some of our kids who have eye focusing issues, and you said you started vision therapy, if it's something to do with that, it will help with that, so that the child will be able to orient on eyes. Eyes are hard things to look at. I will tell you that the idea of talking into a camera in the beginning, because it's reflective, and when I'm talking to you guys, I'm looking into the camera, it felt weird. But you get used to it, and our kids do get used to, and the more eye contact that they will make, the less hot it is for the majority of the time. There's still going to be times when we all feel that intensity, right? But I'm also going to say to you, and keep in mind, not an expert, this is just coming from a mom point of view, is your child on a probiotic? Because I know that my son struggles with yeast and with yeast overgrowth. And years ago, long before I ever had my child, and we're not talking about, forgive me, there are commercials all over the place featuring things that are yeast things for when a woman has a yeast infection. We're not talking about that. While that's a semi-related thing, somebody can have yeast issues and never have a yeast infection. Entirely different things. But we all have a certain amount of yeast that's in our bodies, and if we eat differently or something breaks up the ecosystem of our body, the yeast can overgrow. It's a living organism. And if you've ever done proofing, getting ready to make bread, where you put the yeast packet in, Emily was just showing us with making bread, you put the yeast packet in and you put some heat in and it grows, right? It does that within our bodies as well. And people can have all kinds of reactions when they have a yeast overgrowth, including anxiety and including having difficulty making eye contact. So one of the things that we can do that's really basic and is not intensive is to do a probiotic. If your child has had an antibiotic, they probably could benefit from a probiotic. You can buy them over the counter, that you can go to a health food store. They have lots of different kinds. There's even some that you can get that are in a chewable that looks like a gummy shark, I think they are, or gummy bears. They might be gummy dolphins. I don't know. But there are lots of probiotics out there. There's the little drinks that you can do, and you can get them dairy-free. It does not have to be in yogurt. And I know that a couple of years ago, way after we had done yeast interventions with my son and done all kinds of things with and for him that had to do with yeast and had him on a probiotic, I had a series of sinus infections, and I'd been through antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic, and then I suddenly got horribly dizzy. And I was having difficulty driving. I just was dizzy. And I'm somebody who's dizzy a lot anyway, because I got inner ear and allergy issues. But I remember talking to somebody about it, and they said, "Oh, are you taking a probiotic?" And I said, "No, I thought you only did that after you took an antibiotic, and I've been off the antibiotics for a while. Take the probiotic." And what I discovered was that my dizziness became better because I was better able to focus my eyes. And that really was very eye-opening. I even had started to notice that my husband had said, "Are you mad at me? You're not really making eye contact with me." And I was like, what are you talking about? And I found it difficult. And then the probiotic, within a couple of days, it just evened things out. So may or may not be, but a probiotic given in the right amount, and you just follow the directions on the bottle. Like I said, it's over the counter. A probiotic can't hurt you. It's one of those things that we could all be on a daily basis, and there's no harm to be done. They give it to babies, infants. So, follow the directions and talk to your doctor, of course. That's always good advice. But if your child isn't on a probiotic and you're having really intense eye contact issues, I would encourage you to be working on it with a therapist like you're doing, and reinforcing it and making sure that it's very pleasurable when they're making the eye contact. Be patient with the fact that it's difficult. You're already doing the vision therapy. I would add a probiotic in and just see what happens. Some people also report that their kids make better eye contact when they're getting vitamin A. I found exactly the opposite with my child. Can't tell you why, but exactly the opposite. If I give him a vitamin A supplement, eye contact, gone. But a lot of people report that it's helpful to their child. Again, talk to your child's doctor about it and see what you think, but let us know. Would love to know. But again, very common that our kids have difficulty, and they know what the behavior is, right? That what's happened is she's learned the behavior. She knows that reinforcement is going to come, and so she's kind of trying to make it easier for herself, turning her head and look and raising her eyebrows, right? That's what my son used to do. They'd say, "Look at me," and he'd turn and he'd do the eyebrows and do this, but he'd be looking someplace else. So you make sure, we talked about shaping today, turning the head is part of it, shaping that, but then getting the eye contact. Maybe even try, I've said before on the show with Jem, what my instinct would be that when he would make eye contact, that I would go, "Yes, you're making eye contact," and then it became too hot for him. So what I started doing is when he would make eye contact, I would go, "Oh, I just love it when you make eye contact with me," and give him a nice little squeeze and keep it all very low key so that it doesn't get too hot. And that still is effective. I just get too big sometimes for him. He says, "Mom, it doesn't feel good when you get that big. It's too much for him sensory-wise." So I scale it back. Anyway, all right, so we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and look at what you guys have written into the question of the day, which is, what part of the day do you find the most frustrating? Actually, we're going to the A word, and then we'll come back from that and look at what you guys wrote in. So this is the ongoing documentary. We were just talking about Jack Riley. He is a little boy who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. And in real time, Jack Riley is 5 now. But the video that you're going to see is from when I think he was just about to turn 4. And we see all the progress that he's been making and how his program is out moving about in the world. So take a look. This is the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack.
Jack Riley.
He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Exciting.
I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
The silly bodies consist of him running up, bumping up against people, objects, when he's tensing. So we implement the rule that he has a certain number of happy faces he has at the very beginning. He loses them every time he engages in that behavior. His motivation is to at least have one at the end of the session, and then he gets to have his preferred activity or treat that he only gets if he's able to maintain at least one happy face. This is a response cost, so he can't earn them back. He only loses them. So why is Suzanne laughing at you?
Because he said
Because
something.
I said something funny.
Because I said something
Jeff
funny.
Riley. Okay, that's one.
Because I said something funny. Because
What did-
I said something funny.
There you go, but why did I take a happy face away? Because you were, look at me, because you were tensing, okay? So you're tensing.
I
calm
gotta
body.
get my Smarty back. We need it.
We don't get it back. You can have a nice calm body and then you won't lose anymore. You're doing so good so far though, Jack. Look, you have 4 left. Today we're gonna go into the library, okay? And there's some rules that we have to follow in the library. So you have to stay with Dad or Miss Suzanne or Miss Jessica in the library, okay?
Or Mr. Brown.
Or Miss. And what kind of voice do you have to use in the library? Do you use a loud voice or a
And Jason.
whisper, okay? And there's books there, there's computers and toys in there, okay? Hey, look at me. If you want to touch or look at anything, you have to tell Dad, okay? If you do a good job and you have a nice calm body to do listening, and you have at least one happy face, what do you get?
Your iPod.
That's right.
That is at home.
It's in my pocket. I have it right here. Okay? So go with Dad, hold his hand. Inside voice, okay?
These are
What do you want to get a book about?
about towers.
About what?
Towers.
Towers?
Fairy tales? Castles?
Okay.
Let's have this book.
Nursery rhymes? We're gonna go find this book, okay?
Let's go. Come on. Nursery rhymes that is in the castle.
See how they have letters? We're looking for the letter A.
Let's go find A.
Go find the letter A. Go find it.
Yeah, that's the number 4. We're looking for the number 5.
We found the letter A.
And this is the.
You want to get that one?
Do you want to read that?
That one and bring it up. Let's go upstairs, please.
You're doing good asking, buddy. Welcome back. Incredible series. I hope that you watch this series in whatever way makes sense for you. They have their own very own YouTube channel. You can watch the entire series. I came here to work right when they had begun the series, and I said, you know, this is amazing, but what will really be amazing is when there's 2 years worth of footage, because people will be able to see the arc of where they came from to where they're going, and we're there. Ladies and gentlemen, we're there. And I encourage you, I just got chills. I encourage you to watch what's possible. If people have been telling you, oh, we don't want to raise too much hope, and you don't want to, get all hopeful, I don't know why. Let's all have hope. I love Nancy Allspaw Jackson said something the other day, and she said, well, I wanted to use my favorite 4-letter word. And I thought, ooh, what's your favorite 4-letter word? And she said, hope. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Because hope is a lovely thing. And wield it whenever necessary. Make it your favorite 4-letter word and take a look at the A word, because it will fill you with hope. It's not always easy, but there's always hope. I wanted to take a couple of seconds here just to talk about our question of the day, which was what time of day is most frustrating, and probably we'll have a little bit of time to talk about that with Dr. Jonathon Tarbox when he's in here. And very interesting what you guys have written in. Overwhelmingly, you guys have voted for meal times, bedtime, that in the middle of the night. I love this one, 4 a.m. when he should be asleep, and I'm trying to too, but he wants to get up and play with his iPad. Problem is it needs a code and he doesn't know it. Ooh, dicey. Another person wrote in bedtime and interrupting stereotype routines like lining up or playing ABA on her own.
Love that. Not so bad compared to before times. Yeah, it's all relative, right? Other people saying night, trouble sleeping, mornings getting ready for school, and ladies and gentlemen, yes, wait for it, homework. Yes. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about some of these with Dr. Jonathon Tarbox. Take a look at our Thanksgiving and November food crafts that Emily and I did a couple of years ago. We're going to be back with Dr. Jonathon Tarbox answering your questions. Stick with us. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm Shannon Penrod, and with me in the kitchen right now is Emily Goodwin. She's the technical director of our show and very creative, so I've asked her to be here with me to show you some really fun, easy, and healthy recipes that you can do for Thanksgiving with your children. Okay, so the first thing we want to show you how to do is make this lovely fall bouquet of vegetables. What we've used here are many different colors of peppers, but we made some awesome dip that are holding the skewers of the vegetables so that, yes, Emily's showing you, your kids can dip them in. It really encourages them to eat their colorful veggies. And the dip was made with sour cream, cream cheese, and a lovely organic ranch dip mix. So easy to find and easy to make, and if you chill it, it sets up a little bit harder so that you can stick the skewers in and they stand up. So what we need to make the actual leaves are lots of different colors of peppers that we have, and some skewers and some cookie cutters. Before the kids come though, you want to prep a couple of things and get them ready, because you're going to need a sharp knife to cut into the pears. I'm taking off the top of the pear and the bottom, and I'm removing that to the side, just making a cut into it, and I'm going to take out the seeds and the little spines as much as I can so that I can lay it as flat as possible. And Emily, how about if you pick out a cookie cutter for me there that I'm going to cut.
Go with this one.
And if you have time, you can cut all these little spines out so that it makes it easier for the kids. And then invite the kids in with the cookie cutters, and you lay it flat. And she's picked this wonderful leaf. I'm going to find a spot where it's going to fit pretty well, and I want to start it, but don't get too far before I take a plate, stick it on top of the cookie cutter, and push down. And you can hear the little crunch sound. It just makes it easier on the hands when you do that. And you can see that sometimes there's little shreds that I need to take care of, but it makes a lovely leaf. And I'm gonna hand that off to Emily so that she can skewer it while I take another piece of pepper. This is from a red one. I'm going to make a lovely maple leaf out of this one. I'm going to start it, put the plate on it, and crunch it. And the kids love it. Makes a terrible little crunchy noise, but it's really kind of fun. Get some aggression out, pull it out, and just clean it up a little bit around the edges. But you get the idea. It makes a lovely, crisp autumn leaf that's so colorful. And we stick them in the dip, and the kids enjoy taking them out of the pot and sticking them in the dip and eating them. It's a wonderful way to introduce them to the fun of fresh vegetables and get the rainbow inside them. Because we always talk at my house about we need to eat the rainbow. We know that all those colors are good for us, and it tastes good. Wonderful. Easy to do. And now we are going to make some really awesome fruit turkeys. We need a Bosc pear, we need an apple and an orange. This is kind of a light-skinned orange, but it is an orange, and some lemon juice. What I've already done is taken half of a lemon and squeeze it, because we don't want our apples to get brown. Squeeze it, I know. It's spitting at us both. That's okay. It smells good. And I would probably, depending on the age of my child, prep some of this ahead of time. But if they're good with dull knives, and you don't need a sharp knife for any of this, then you can have them help. I just cut the pear in half. And if you wanted to, if your child's a big fruit eater, you could go ahead and core it now. But we're going to assume that they're not going to eat the whole thing. And she's placed her turkey there. Now I'm going to take an apple that's been washed, and I'm just going to cut it into segments. I'm going to take the time to core these and have you dip them in the lemon. That's going to prevent it from browning, because we know that our kids generally don't like to eat things that are brown. They say it's gone bad. Dipping it in the lemon, it gives it a little bit of tang and keeps it from browning. What I like about this is that we're encouraging our children to play with our food. And that's a good thing to get them to eat healthy. Have them play with the food. Arrange it like feathers around the plate. I think that's probably enough. And then I'm going to take the orange and cut it into segments. And these are going to become other feathers on our turkey. And you could put other fruits in, and you could put other vegetables in if you wanted to. You could also put it on a bed of some kind of nut butter if your child doesn't have allergies to those. You could do peanut butter or almond butter, anything like that. So we've got them all arranged so that it looks like feathers. We have to give this turkey some character. So we're going to take half of a cashew, and I'm going to have you figure out where his nose goes and just jam it right in there. And then these are all natural, dehydrated. They're just dried cranberries that we're going to use for a snood. And go ahead and stick a snood next to his little nose. They start to really have some character. And what we did was took really organic, fresh, dried mango pieces and with scissors cut little feet. And the kids can do these with kitty scissors and plop those feet right on there. And this is a great thing to give to a child, something to do, and then they get to eat their turkey, gobble it up. Really healthy, really fresh tasting, fabulous stuff for our kids. Awesome. Gobble, gobble.
Gobble, gobble. Now we're moving on to our politically correct Native American corn cookies. We have some organic candies here. We have some generic white frosting. We have some fruit roll-up here.
You can get these organic and vegetable colored so that you aren't using artificial colors and flavors. If you choose to, you pretty much have to order them online, but you can get them.
Yes. And then we have just some oval-shaped cookies. You can use any kind of cookie. You can use shortbread or wafer. These are just the ones that we have here. So I split my cookie in half. And then you're just going to use a little bit of frosting. And you're only actually frosting one end of the cookie. So you don't even need that much frosting. And then we're going to use our candies and decorate it to look like an ear of Native American corn.
Mine's very orange. I don't know why. Okay.
So it should look like this when you're there. And this is the hard part, because the fruit roll-up is a little sticky, and I have a sharp knife, but you certainly don't need one. It's very soft to cut. And this one happened to come in 2 colors, so I cut the blue piece off, or you can cut just 1/2 of your fruit roll-up. You're just gonna wrap the bottom half. This just helps support the leaves once you start to attach the green. So you're just wrapping the bottom half of the cookie. Then with the green part, you're gonna wanna cut some leaves just like this. And I cut about 4 of these out with a piece of fruit roll-up I have left. They don't have to be perfect.
And kids will enjoy this, and you really can use a table knife for this. In fact, I'm going to do that with my table knife here. Oh, that's super duper easy. It's fun too. It's a little on the sticky side. This is a great sensory thing.
And then from there, you're just gonna attach your leaves as if it were an ear of corn. So they'll flap out just a little bit, and I start with the back 2 leaves. And it stretches, it's fruit roll-up. And then front 2 leaves. So it's starting to look like an ear of corn. And then I use the extra fruit roll-up just to wrap the bottom of the cookie to complete the green, because sometimes you can see through to the blue. But then that's it, and you've got your little ear of corn cookie.
Mine's not fully done, but he's coming along. Cool.
Pretty easy.
Very fun and tasty too. Welcome back to Autism Live. I mentioned that we're having some gremlins, and so that video you just saw was a little pixelated, and the gremlins will be taking care of that. But hopefully you could catch the main drift of it. But right now in the studio we have the wonderful and fabulous Dr. Jonathon Tarbox. Happy Halloween and happy November. I've been saying all week long, the holiday treadmill. Have you heard it winding up? And we were just talking about trick-or-treating, that you were out with your kids last night, being the bus driver, taking them hither and yon, and how fun that can be. But so thrilled to have you here. And for those of you who are new to the program, haven't seen Dr. Tarbox on the show before, what a treat in store for you. This is not the trick, this is the treat. He is the director of the Autism Research Group and also the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And we talk about jargon every day, but Dr. Tarbox is one of the best experts I have ever met at putting things in terms that don't use the jargon.
Oh, thank you.
You're better at it than I am now.
I doubt that.
No, seriously, there are times now when I think, today was a great example. Our word for today was shaping.
Okay.
And I liked the actual definition better than the working definition. I really have gone to the dark side.
That's how you know you're a real ABA geek.
Oh no, this is what's happened to me. And sometimes when I'm trying to think of how do I want to put this not in jargon, I think, how would Dr. Tarbox explain this? I literally do.
Cool.
What would JT do? So there we have it. But thrilled to have you here today, and we didn't even talk about what we were going to talk about, so I'm just throwing this at you cold.
All right, let's have it.
I want to talk about perspective taking.
Okay, great.
And I know that you're a great person to talk about that, but I don't necessarily want to talk about perspective taking for individuals who are on the spectrum.
Okay.
Because what I see is once somebody is getting really good quality ABA, it at least becomes part of the discussion.
Right.
Teaching perspective taking to this individual. I want to know, how do we teach perspective taking to individuals who are not on the spectrum?
Right, okay, well, very interesting. And I don't know if you remember, but our workshop next Wednesday, this sounds like it was planned this way, but yeah, our workshop on Wednesday is specifically about that, teaching perspective taking, so it's perfect timing. Right, so, well, actually, the way that you teach perspective taking to folks off of the spectrum is the same as folks on the spectrum, right? And so I know we talk about, everyone in the autism community spends a lot of time talking about differences for folks on the spectrum, but there's a lot more similarities than there are differences, right? We're all human beings. The same basic principles of learning and motivation apply to all of us. So, some kids who are severely affected might require a lot more learning opportunities to learn the same skill. So, if you take a really simple example like just learning, object labels like, pen. When you see a pen, a 3-year-old child on the spectrum might require, I don't know, several hundred, maybe even 1,000 trials of learning to really learn it and for it to maintain, whereas a typically developing child, they might get it in 1 trial or 2 trials or maybe 5 trials. But the basic process is the same. There's no difference. And actually, again, for folks off the spectrum, there's an analogy like if you wanted to teach me how to play, like let's say, basketball, or teach me how to be a good dancer, I'd probably require many tens of thousands of trials, right? Whereas if you take someone else who's really athletic, they might require only a few hours to actually get a fairly reasonable basic basketball playing repertoire, right?
Okay.
So same basic idea. But the way that we learn perspective taking is simply lots of practice opportunities of talking about what it's like to be in someone else's shoes versus what it's like to be in your shoes. And literally just taking turns thinking about what that person's thinking about versus thinking about what I'm thinking about. And so there's actually some decent research emerging now to show that this too is a learned behavior. Of course the brain is involved, critically involved in perspective taking, and the brain is critically involved in every other type of thinking that you do as well, but it's still a learned skill. And typically developing kids might learn it relatively quickly, some more than others. There's some evidence that some major areas of psychopathology, perspective taking might be almost completely lacking in some folks with schizophrenia, for example, and personality disorders, some other areas that I'm not an expert in. But definitely there's a range in how well perspective taking abilities develop across different folks, whether you're on or off the spectrum. So think about friends of yours that are the most empathetic, the most emotionally involved in other people's lives, and then contrast them with people that you know that are the biggest jerks, basically, and all about themselves, you know what I mean? Every way that they look at the world, every experience they have in the world, they interpret it as, how is this experience about me? Okay? And basically there you have the two ends of the spectrum of perspective taking, right? And it doesn't matter if you're on or off the autism spectrum, you could be at either one of those ends, right? Most people are somewhere in the middle. Is that getting close to answering your question? I guess you want more practical advice.
Well, I mean, I think what I'm realizing is that it is the same for all of us, and that maybe my assumption is when somebody isn't on the spectrum, that they would have gotten the perspective taken by now, and they haven't. And what I need to do is give them more opportunities, and I need to reinforce it. I need to be sneaky about it when it's adults who don't know that I'm trying to do something and change their behavior. Right.
Well,
I'm not going to introduce it and say, hey, today we're going to work on perspective taking for you, because you're not very good at it.
Well, and I'm just guessing here that you're probably talking about questions that moms often have about their husbands and how they can get their husbands to be more sensitive or more...
Actually, the thing that keeps coming up for us is that sometimes at schools that there is a lack of sensitivity to the fact that our kids are doing things differently and trying to get people to see... You know, could you take the perspective of the child who's over here ever?
Okay, so we're actually developing a protocol. Next time you have Angela on the show, you should talk to her about it. Angela and I are developing a protocol for her doctoral dissertation that is going to be specifically to teach typically developing kids in school how to empathize and take the perspective of folks with disabilities. And so basically, long story short, it's empathy involves the behavior of identifying how you are similar to someone else. And so the more that you identify similarities between yourself and others, the more you're going to empathize with them. And that is a behavior. Again, the brain's involved, but that's an active response. It's an active thing that you can do in your time on this earth is think about how you're similar to others. All major religions, like the core value of every major religion on the earth is about that. It's about how are we all the same as human beings. And that's one thing at a really broad level. But at a more specific level, you could think about how am I similar to this one other person? And to the extent that you do that, you're going to have more empathy. Now, the opposite process, or it's the same process but done in the opposite direction, has the opposite effect. So the more that you think about how another human is different from yourself, the less you actually think about their perspective and the less you care about their perspective. So think about, it's an extreme example, but Nazi Germany. What did the Germans do in terms of public relations to make it easier for the German citizenship to think that it's okay to kill Jewish people?
Well, they labeled them. They put the stars on them, and so that it was visible.
So you're making it really tangible. This person is not you. This person is other than you. Okay. They had all kinds of PR, public relations campaigns saying things like, Jewish people were subhuman, like they're almost not quite the same species. We saw a lot of that actually here in the United States with black versus white racism. That black people were talked about as having lower IQ or smaller brains or this or that or somehow not quite human.
Huckleberry Finn, the culmination of that is when Jim cuts himself and Huckleberry sees you bleed the same color that I do, and he has the whole revelation. Even though he's been on this adventure with this man who's saved his life, it isn't until he sees this is how we're the same.
And that's exactly it. So that's an example of this person is similar to me or the same as me. Our blood is the same. Every major peace advocate that I'm aware of in human history, most of what they did was teach people about how your enemy is similar to you. So Gandhi was all about talking about how basic core human values and how we all have a mom. We all, get cold. We all get hungry. We all, want peace. None of us really want war. Even warmongers don't really want war. They don't want to get hurt, right? And so it's all about identifying similarities. And so. For a kid, let's say a typically developing kid on the playground, in your average school, it might be something like, how is your peer with autism, or your peer in a wheelchair, or your peer on crutches, or whatever? How are they similar to you? And a very childish, basic way of looking at things would be something like our politicians do all the time, which is pick something that's really obviously different and talk about that a lot, right? But we want the opposite of that. So it might be something like, what do you guys both like to eat? If that's similar, that's something to talk about and focus on. What music do you guys both like? What is your favorite What hurt the most? Like, did you ever fall down and get hurt? How was that similar? And really, it's just a matter of identifying things that are similar. And then the more that you relate to someone else in terms of similarity, and that's a behavior, the relating behavior, the more that you're going to empathize with them, and your behavior is going to improve with respect to that person.
This is really powerful.
It's really exciting stuff. When you think it's a learned behavior, which means it's teachable. It's something you can actually do something about. It's not just an inborn quality, you know. And when we look at kids, we might be tempted to think like, oh no, he's just naturally more empathetic. But if you look at the environment that they were raised in, if you look at how their parents act and what their parents talk about, what you might find is their parents spend a lot more time noticing good things about humans and about similarities between humans, and spend less time talking about what they hate about other people.
Powerful, powerful stuff. I want to continue talking about perspective taking, and we're going to have Dr. Tarbox tell us more about what's happening next Wednesday after we take a break, so stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. Today we're going to talk about the 10 steps to empowerment. Step number 1, accept and embrace this challenge. By telling you to accept and embrace the challenge, I don't mean you have to love autism. Let's get this straight. I love my child with autism, but I hate that autism stole a big part of his childhood. When I look back at my journey, I realize that I knew in my gut that my son was regressing at the age of 2. I had a hard time with acceptance. It didn't come easy for me. My denial may have stemmed from the fact that I didn't want to go through what my own mother had, raising a child with Down syndrome with no support. I even equated my mother's alcoholism with her being stuck at home with a disabled child. I didn't want that life for myself. I couldn't believe that having lived through the experience of having a brother with special needs, I was now faced with having to raise my own child with special needs as well. But being in denial did not make the truth go away. It's when we can accept the truth that it can set us free. Until next time, stay strong and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have Dr. Jonathon Tarbox with us. He is the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and also the director of the Autism Research Group. And we're having a really interesting conversation about perspective taking that I don't know about the rest of you, but it's really, during the break we were talking about, I said that, you know, as an autism parent, we're always trying to get other parents to understand what autism and build that autism awareness, but I think a lot of times we focus on, you don't understand, my child is different, and that maybe we would get more traction if I said to Dr. Tarbox, if we said, this is how my child is like yours, and you brought up that if we did a combination platter of them, of this is how my child is different, which is similar to how your child is different.
Right.
Very interesting topic of conversation.
And everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, right? I mean, even the best athlete is bad at something, right? Or even the smartest kid is not so good at whatever, right? Or even the most socially outgoing person, there must be some aspect of social interaction that they're not so hot at, right? Or there's something else that they're not good at. And so just acknowledging we're all not good at something, there's a similarity, right? You're not good at something, I'm not good at something too. We're both not good at something.
My list
That's
is
similarity.
Well, and you know, what's funny about that, even as you say that, so many times since my son was diagnosed, people will say to me, so help me to understand, what is autism? And we talk about how it's a neurological difference and how, and I would say, you know, my child learns things in a different way and sees things in a different way, and they'll say, give me an example. And I'll say, oh, well, you know, he might find it overwhelming, you know, this, and then 9 times out of 10 people go, oh my gosh, I am like that too. Does that mean that I'm on the spectrum? And then we have that discussion about how it's a big spectrum and you have to have a certain number of things to have a diagnosis, but that we all have some aspect of, that we don't like something. We don't like the nails on the chalkboard. For us, it's a sensory.
Right.
So interesting that when you get in depth, they identify how it's the same.
That's right. Yeah.
Fascinating.
And as it turns out, I mean, just humans have a lot more in common than they have in difference, And it's just that simple. And, like any major life event that throws people into a dramatic, scary, intense circumstance where they can't escape from each other, those people almost always end up forming a bond and end up loving each other and end up noticing their similarities more than their differences. And the classic example of this is the military. The military is a classic, just everyone's different, different regions of the country, different income levels, different skin color, different religions. And yet no one becomes closer than people in the same unit who go off to war. Doesn't matter where they came from. When they're done, when they come back, they're the same, right?
Yeah.
Even though they're not, right?
Yeah.
And it's all about sharing something, so they have something in common. Again, relating oneself to the other person as similar is just the only thing they can do to get by, basically.
Interesting. So interesting. And you have something coming up on Wednesday that people should know about, an event that you guys are doing. Tell us about it.
Right. So Autism Research Group, our nonprofit, is doing, it's part of our sort of community outreach and dissemination program, which is one of the foundations of why we exist. We're doing a workshop, an all-day workshop on how to teach perspective taking to kids on the spectrum. It's primarily targeted towards board-certified behavior analysts and other professionals such as speech and language pathologists and special ed teachers, but it's open to the public. Anyone's invited, and we do encourage parents to come. Some of it might be a little bit more jargony or techy than some parents will really enjoy, but we do try to make things practical and sort of keep them at the common sense level that is actually useful rather than getting boring and dry and overly technically sounding. So I think parents will still enjoy it. I think we do still have some seats available, so yeah, if people are interested, they should go to our website, which is www.autismresearchgroup.org, or they can go directly to the conference website, which is workshop.autismresearchgroup.org.
Okay, and very affordable. It
I think it's $65 or $60, something like that.
But that includes lunch.
It includes lunch. And it also includes the CEU units for whether you're a board-certified behavior analyst or an MFT, you get the CEU units for free, which is included with the price. So
and 3 speakers.
Yeah, 3 speakers. So the workshop begins with me presenting on an introduction to relational frame theory, which is basically the area of behavior analysis that gets to all of this stuff. So it's the part of ABA that applies to all complex behavior and cognition, thinking, reasoning, problem solving, perspective taking, all of that stuff. Relational frame theory is really where ABA really comes into its own to help address all of these cognitive topics from a really scientific, practical perspective.
Great.
So I'm going to be doing an overview of that. My goal is to make RFT, which is a pretty complex theory, make it simple and understandable and practical. Then Dr. Marianne Jackson from Fresno State, who's also on our board of ARG, she is going to give the second talk, and that's going to be a description of research that's been published on relational frame theory and perspective taking. So that should be a lot of fun. That should be interesting. Then Dr. Adele Nadowski is going to be finishing up the workshop with a presentation describing practical strategies for how to now actually go teach this stuff.
Great. So I wish that I were available that day. I'm here doing a show, but I wish I were available.
You can always come by when you're done to catch the afternoon.
I'm going to see if I can't make that happen, because I'd love to be there. Sounds very interesting. We're going to take a short break and come back, and Dr. Tarbox is going to answer some of the questions that you guys have been writing in, so stick with us. So the first one.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. For November, we're going to be working on memory with our kids, and what better way than doing a scavenger hunt. The materials you'll be needing for this activity are a camera, cardstock, scissors, glue, and whatever objects you want your child to be hunting for. Step 1, you're the hunter. Find all the objects you want your child looking for and take photos of them. Now that you've collected all the objects you want your kids hunting for later, print out the images and then cut them out and glue them on a cardstock just so they're organized and isolated. Now that the scavenger hunt template is done, put all the objects back where they belong. Remember, we're working on memory, so put them in places that your kids would normally find them. You want them to be successful.
We'll make this one really easy to find. Well, I hope you enjoyed this activity with your kids. Remember, the scavenger hunt is supposed to be a fun way to work on memory. Well, until next time, craft on, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Dr. Jonathon Tarbox. We call this Science Beat with Dr. Tarbox because we will sometimes take apart some research. If we have time later on, I want to ask you about a couple of things that have been in the news this week, but I want to get to your questions first. Somebody just wrote in and said, how many trials do I need to do before something is considered mastered? In regards with skills, if I answer no to an assessment question and I introduce an activity and my 5-year-old does all 10 trials correct, then is it safe to go ahead and master him and move on? I think that's a great question.
It is a great question, and there's actually quite a few different aspects to that. So the first is when you answer the assessment questions and skills, basically what you're doing is stating your opinion based on your history of observation with your child or your client if you're a professional. Do you think the child can do a particular skill? Yes or no? And all you can do is use your memory, right, to the best of your ability, and you may not know. If you're really not sure, then you shouldn't choose yes or no. You should choose probe, right? And then you go and actually test it with the child to see if they can do it. However, if you do think that they can't do it, if you're pretty sure, you choose no, and then you introduce it, as she did. And now it sounds like the kid got the first 10 trials correct. So a couple different things here. One is if she was prompting him, helping him, right, get a correct response, and he got it correct, and she's using positive reinforcement, which I assume she's probably using prompting and reinforcement, and he's getting it all correct under those conditions, that definitely does not mean that he knows how to do it. Because if you're providing prompting, then you're providing hints, basically, right? Or cues or some kind of support to help the child make a correct response. So if he may still be depending on the prompting. Also, even if you're just providing positive reinforcement without prompting for those 10 trials, it's possible that because he got the positive reinforcement on that first trial, that helped him respond correctly on the rest of the trials. So usually we don't know for sure just in 10 trials that a kid knows it. Usually mastery criteria requires 80% correct or better without any prompting at all across 2 or more days. So you do it once, 80% correct or better, great. Now you come back the next day, ideally have someone else try it, not even yourself, right? Because it could be something about you, some inadvertent cue that you're giving, right? So you have someone else try it with the kid, and then they still get 80% correct or better without any prompting, then we can call it mastered. However, in this case, it sounds like it's possible that her child did actually already know it, right? And that when she answered no, maybe she was not correct, right? Which is totally possible, totally understandable.
Sometimes they know more than we think they know.
Of course, yeah, that happens all the time. And the opposite happens too, right? And that's why it's really just your best guess. That's why you always have to go and actually try it in person to confirm it. So, if she thinks that's a possibility that he really did already know it, and that the reason why he got 10 correct out of the first 10 is because he already knew it, then yeah, maybe it is, maybe he knows it, but I wouldn't even call that mastered. I'd say he already knew it, right? So then really if you want to be sure, what you do now, tomorrow, is go back and try it again without any prompting, and really without even any reinforcement. Maybe just some praise or something like that. Just see if he can do it. Run a few trials. If he can do it, great. Step away. Try it again the next day. Run a few trials. If he can still do it, I'd say, yeah, you don't need to teach him.
Okay.
But if you run a few trials with no prompting, no reinforcement, and he cannot do it, then there you go. It's not mastered, and keep teaching.
Okay. And even, I think they talk about this, I know they talk about it in the e-learning, and I think there's a place in skills to do this, that keep in mind, once your child masters something, we always had a book that was just my son's lessons, and then a binder with all the lessons in it, and then we had a mastery notebook.
Absolutely.
Because that we would want to still revisit those things from time to time.
Critical, yeah. It's very important.
Because otherwise you lose a skill, and there is a space on skills that if your child loses a skill that you can mark it lost and put it back in. So
yeah, it's just like learning a foreign language. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? You got to continue to practice whatever your newly learned skills are if you want to stay fluent at them.
Absolutely, but so thrilled that you're using skills.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear.
And that that you're using these terms, and good for you. You're doing a great job. Okay, so another question that came in this morning, and they said thank you, by the way.
You're welcome.
So I love the live feature. So hi, Dr. Tarbox and Shannon. Had my IEP yesterday, and they offered my son 3 hours a day in an autism special class, and within that he gets 2 25 minutes of group sessions and 2 30-minute group speech. The class has 5, including my son, and 1 teacher and 2 aides. He is currently with CARD for 40 hours. They won't give me just OT and speech alone. My question is, if I can work the 40 hours of CARD with 15 hours of school, is that too much for him? And if so, how would I get my insurance to cover OT and speech? Thank you, and God bless you. I'm just going to say that there's a space on your IEP where you can agree to part of it and not the whole thing.
Okay.
So when they, sometimes schools will be a little bit, it's a strong word, but coercive, that they'll try to talk you into, well, we're going to give you this and this, but you got to take it with this, and they'll make it sound like you have no choice,
right.
And that they won't do it because it's going to be,
good point.
It's going to be disruptive to them. If your child just breezes in for OT and just breezes in for speech and the rest of the kids are there, it's going to be disruptive for them.
But that
doesn't mean you can't do it.
Right, absolutely, and it's also more expensive to give one-on-one OT and speech rather than group OT and speech, right?
And they probably won't do that. They'll just they'll shuffle your child in for the group thing, but it's going to make it so that they have to do it at a specific time. It's gonna, that book, Who Moved My Cheese? It's going to move their cheese, right? So it's going to move their cheese, and they don't really want to do it. That doesn't mean that they can specify that. They can't.
Right.
So.
And the main, I think you mentioned the child's about 3 years old.
I believe that because they wrote in on Wednesday. I think you're the same person who wrote in that their child is 3 because we talked about the 40 hours of CARD.
So if they are, if the child is, 5 years old or younger, and they have funding for 40 hours a week of ABA, they need to do 40 hours a week of ABA. Yeah. I mean, literally, it has to happen, right?
Right.
Just make it happen no matter what it takes for a year or 2 at least, okay?
Yes.
That's the kid's best bet at making the most progress. I'm not saying speech and OT aren't important. Those might be good supplemental services, but the core treatment that has been proven to work for thousands of kids is 40 hours a week of ABA. So they just got the Cadillac, so don't give it up, right?
Right.
Make that happen. Now, can you make that happen while also using these other services that the school district is offering? That depends on your schedule, and it depends on your flexibility, and it depends on how crazy you're going to go, basically trying to make all of this happen. Can your child do it though? Is a 3-year-old capable of about 55 hours a week of some kind of educational therapeutic services? Right. Absolutely. It can definitely be done. It's a matter of making the schedule work though. You might have to do 6 hours or 8 hours on a Saturday.
Right.
And you might have to do 4 hours each day, Monday through Friday. I mean, it's not going to be easy, right? You may even have to do services on Sunday.
And you would want to ramp it up. You wouldn't want to start at 55, right?
Yeah. Usually you would ramp it up gradually, but you want to do it. It's the best thing to do. And the other thing to keep in mind too is the services that the school is offering. What time of the day are they? And if you do accept those, what is that going to do to your ABA services?
Right.
So if it's going to make it so that your ABA services are all like in the evening when your kid's really tired, or on Saturday where it ruins your whole family's weekend, whatever plans and everything else, that's something to consider. Is that worth it or not? I'm not sure. I'm a professional scientist, so really my job is to speak from the research, and I'll tell you right now, there is no research to support 15 hours a week of speech and OT, plus whatever you can do with ABA.
Right.
The research supports 40 hours a week of ABA, plus whatever you can tack on with OT or speech, that's great, but the 40 hours a week of ABA is the core treatment that's supported by research. So if in order to do that efficiently and during a time of day when your kid's actually going to be awake and ready to learn, if you have to say no to the other services or somehow arrange them some other way, that may well be what you need to do.
Okay, let me throw a couple of other spanners into this work, because it's possible, I don't know which your funding source is. If you have regional center funding, they're very particular about they will not fund anything over 40 hours for a child this young. But here's a whole other thing to be thinking about. It's possible that they could be going to school with an ABA aide. That's something that could be considered depending upon who your resource is, which might be good in terms of if the child is definitely needing social interaction. But at 3, Again, going back to, I think about our son, and at 3, he was going to speech and OT at the school, and they had offered us the preschool, but they wanted us to go 8 hours a day to the preschool.
Wow. Yeah.
And we said, no, thank you. We're just going to take the speech and the OT, which is how I know you can do that. And it was in California. And because we wanted to keep those 40 hours, we had regional center funding. We wanted those 40 hours for ABA. And at that point, where my son needed it, was intensive one-on-one without a lot of distractions.
Right.
And so we prioritized that and said no thank you to the school for the other stuff. So that doesn't mean, that you have to let go of the speech and the OT. And if you need help figuring that aspect of it out, we can talk, because they can't do that to you. But I think it really depends on what the funding is.
It does, yeah. And the family's availability and a lot of factors.
Right.
Really what you can make work for your family and your situation.
But don't sign that agreement. If you've been watching the show, don't sign that agreement on the day that they give it to you. Hopefully you haven't signed that IEP, so you still have room to negotiate, and we can figure that out. But I agree with Dr. Tarbox, having had the benefit of that 40 hours at home in that year when my son was 3, and I know how scary it was to say no to what the school was offering to go with that. That year changed everything.
And let me make one more point about that too, and that is, it sounds like from her message, she's a little bit concerned about her child's ability to really, work that hard, essentially, at such a young age. Is he going to be tired? Yes. Is it going to be the hardest work of his life? Probably. The next 2 years might be the hardest 2 years of his entire life. Might be harder than when he goes to college. Might be harder than going to grad school and getting a PhD. It might be harder than joining the military. I mean, who knows? Right. It's really nothing less than an Olympic level of effort, right? And so, if you want to make the Olympic team, you don't say, am I going to be tired for the next couple of years? You say, it's going to be the hardest couple of years of my life, and and it's worth it, and I'm going to do it. And I will be tired, and I won't have much of a life other than this, but I'm going to do it because this is the goal that I want to achieve, and this is the road that I need to take to get to that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with kids, young children in intensive ABA programs. It's a plan basically to just put all your chips in and say, this is what we're doing for this couple of years. And it is going to be hard, and it is going to be tiring, but we're going to do it.
Even you talking about that brings up for me that, so often we have families that are trying to piece together enough, and when is it ever going to be enough? And that we do have a few families that, like you said, have the Cadillac of what's going to happen for their child. And so then it becomes a thing of everyone at some point has to say, this is how much we can do, whether it's because of funding or because of time or whatever it is. And for our families that have a lot, it feels bad and wrong to sometimes say, I'm not going to take everything offered up.
Sure, yeah.
It can feel like, oh no, what if that?
How can I give anything up?
How can I give? But if you think about what's important to your child in this year, people said, no, you need to send him to school. There's that social component of it that is so desperate and dire. Well, he went for the group speech, and he went for the group OT, and we went to play groups and did things that were fun, but he did that 40-hour ABA. It made all the difference. And then the next year, when he was 4, he did go to the preschool, and he went with the aid, and it was the right moment.
And he was ready because after, he had spent a year learning the basic skills that are needed to be successful in those situations.
Yeah, he was ready for that social component. I think anything before that, he wouldn't have learned as much. Right. So each child is individual, but I love this idea of protect those 40 hours. Make sure that you can get those 40 hours, do whatever you have to do that. And missing 1 year of speech and OT at that point, if that's the worst case scenario, would be worth it.
Absolutely.
But I don't think you have to.
Right, you shouldn't have to.
So anyway, all right, we're going to take a short break and come back with some more questions. We're going to take on, with the perspective taking, the idea of a family that's living next door to a Catholic church that is making so much noise that it's making it difficult for their child. So stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with Dr. Jonathon Tarbox. He's the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and he is right now answering your questions live that you guys have sent in. Okay, we have a question: how to handle bottle/stick holding problem for a 3-year-old who is ADDH. And so we're taking that to mean having difficulty actually holding on to it, a fine motor. If it's something else and they're obsessively holding it, write in and let us know, because we're going to try to answer how do we teach the fine motor skills of being able to hold on to things.
Right, absolutely. And fine motor skill development is something that, again, like a lot of other things, just kind of naturally happens, right, in typical child development. But for a lot of the kids that we work with, whether they're on the autism spectrum or the ADHD spectrum, do have problems with developing this skill. And it's like, well, at least from the ABA perspective, the way we treat it is like we treat anything else, which is it's a skill, it's teachable, and it requires a lot of practice with support and with positive feedback when the kid does well, right? So good old prompting and reinforcement and lots of practice. So you'll find OTs have lots of exercises that involve children holding small items in particular ways, like using the pincer grasp, and they have different adaptive ways of holding things, and all of that's fine. But as long as you're making sure they're doing the behavior that you want, which is holding the item in a particular way, and then get them to do it a lot and reinforce the heck out of it, right? So it's going to be pretty boring to just walk around doing this. So instead, have them do whatever they can with the pen that might be fun in some way, right? So if they can write letters, you can practice writing letters with lots of reinforcement. If they can, just draw lines, you could see how many lines we could tally in a minute and use lots of reinforcement. There's other types of tablet things that are like that are kind of fun to play with, like they're magnetic or whatever, so you could draw with it. So you're basically building fine motor practice into something that's naturally fun.
One of the favorite ones that OTs do this time of year is they'll print up, like, you can get free coloring pages online, right? And they have a thick black line, which is what you want, an outline, and they'll get a piece of carpet or just a carpet and get one of the, it has to be supervised because you're going to give them a push pin, which they can only hold in the pincer grasp, and you ask them to push the pin all along the dark line, the coloring line,
Great idea.
and then you take it and put it up to a lamp and it shines through the design.
yeah,
So there's an
that's
automatic reinforcer from it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it can be a holiday thing, so they can be doing pumpkins and
Right.
stuff like that. And kids tend to, it's very therapeutically soothing.
It's fun,
to
yeah.
lay on their stomach on a carpet and be doing so then they're not having to work on all the core
Right.
issues that you have to work on when you're writing. But that's for the pincer grasp. How about for grasping a bottle?
Same thing. You need to arrange many practice opportunities for the behavior to occur that are as fun as possible, not too boring, not naggy, and use lots of positive reinforcement. So try to think of as many different behaviors as possible that require something like holding a bottle. So it can be carrying around objects from point A to point B. You can make a game out of it, like hide the object over there. You know, you can make a mission out of it or something. But it's got to be lots and lots of opportunities. So the classic model is maybe 30 minutes a week, right, with an OT. That's not good enough. I mean, what the OT is doing is probably going to work great, but it might have to be 30 minutes a day. It might have to be 30 minutes a day, twice a day, right? If you really want the child to make progress with it. Like anything else we teach in ABA, we don't do it once a week. We don't even do it 5 times a week. We try to do it 5 times a day, if possible.
Do you guys, have you ever done the things, I'm getting my bottle here, where you take a bottle and you put a certain amount of water in it and then you pour some vegetable oil in, then you can pour little sparkles and things like that and some food color and it'll separate, right? You can give it to the child and have them shake it and then the things move in different directions and then it'll separate again. It can be very reinforcing, but to get them to hold on, because then they have to grab it to shake it.
Exactly, there you go.
In order to do it. So things like that.
Try to make it fun.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're not creative enough or if you can't come up with enough different fun activities, don't be afraid to use contrived positive reinforcement. Like, look, kid, I know it's boring, but you got to do this 50 times and then you get X, Y, and Z.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to be built in. It's better if the reward is built into the activity. That's great. But even if it's not, or even if it is, and you want additional motivation, use some kind of contrived thing. Like, you got to, you know, here's what you're working for. Here's what you're going to earn, and make sure it's something the kid really wants.
Okay, incredible. All right, this is all the time that we have for Dr. Tarbox. So unfortunately, we're not going to have him to talk about the Catholic Church thing, but I can handle that after we say goodbye to him as we close out the show. But thank you so much for being here.
It's always a pleasure.
And good luck on. And I know you don't need luck, but have a great time on Wednesday when you guys are talking about perspective taking. I'm going to see if I can arrange my schedule so I can get over there for a little while.
You should drop by. It'll be fun.
I think it'd be awesome. All right, so thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right, stick with us. We're going to be back to close out the show and to talk about this noise problem with the Catholic Church. We'll be right back. There's been another new study about optimal outcomes, and I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on recovery? Do you think it's possible? Do you believe in recovery from autism?
On recovery, you learn how to adapt. I mean, I've had a lot of experimental brain scans done, and they have found things that are definitely abnormal. I have an enlarged left ventricle that's definitely abnormal. That's not going to go away. That scan was done less than 5 years ago. But you work with someone and they adapt. You're not going to make me an algebra specialist. That's just not going to happen. But things like getting better at public speaking, that is something that I gradually learned. What I'm seeing today, especially with some of the kids on the mild end of the spectrum, I'm seeing teenagers that are much milder than me that haven't learned things like how to go up to the counter at McDonald's and order food all by themselves, how to go on the bus, how to shop, how to go in the store and shop, how to do a checkbook, basic things like that. Because what drives me crazy is when I go back to the cattle world and I see a guy in the maintenance shop that's running the whole maintenance shop at a big plant, and he's as Asperger's as he can be, and he's running a whole maintenance shop. And then I see Junior that's addicted to video games, and you can't get his duff off his chair and get him doing things. Now, when I was in high school, I did a lot of thinking about this. I got kicked out of a large girls' school for throwing a book, and I went to a special boarding school up on a farm, and I was allowed to work with the farm animals. And they let me goof off and not study. But I got to thinking, there's one thing they did not let me do. I goofed off and I didn't study, but I had to physically go to class. When I didn't want to go to the Friday night movie, they made me the projectionist. One thing they were not going to let me do is sit in my room, become a recluse in my room. They were not going to allow that.
I want to know why you threw the book. Why did you throw it?
Oh, I threw a book at a girl because she called me a retard.
Oh, good reason.
Oh, no,
to throw
she
it up.
teased me. And I had some problems getting in fights when kids teased me. But it was always brought about by someone picking on me. And the principal had me kicked out of school, out of a large girls' school for doing that.
And what'd your mom say?
Well, she was not very happy about the whole thing because when the principal called, I answered the phone and he said I was incorrigible and I was kicked out of school. Mother was really angry that he just said that right directly to me, which was definitely not very appropriate.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We just said goodbye to Dr. Tarbox, and of course a question came in for him. We're going to save it for next week, but I do want to address part of the question. We had Angela Persicki on last week, and she works with the Autism Research Group too, and she talked about a study that that she wanted to let us know about video modeling with teenagers for social skills. And I wanted to point out that that study was not done by the Autism Research Group. So I don't have it off the top of my head who it is that did. I know we got a message from the Autism Research Institute this week saying that somebody had watched the show and was looking for that study and thought it was Autism Research Institute. I will find out who did it, and then we'll know that. But I'll save your question for next week with Dr. Tarbox. I wanted to go back, though, and take at least a couple of seconds to talk about this problem with the Catholic Church. Somebody has written into us and said, noise bothers my son. The Catholic Church blasts their amplified sound system into my home several times a day, every day. The Los Angeles Noise Law, Municipal Code, Chapter 11, Article 5, Section 115.02b exempts them from the law. Please help me take the exemption out of the law. I am not a lawyer, and so I don't know exactly how to do that, but as we've talked about perspective taking today and how important it is for people to see other people's points of view, I'm just going to guess that the Catholic Church is not aware enough to understand what it is going to be inconvenienced to change what they have going on to the point that they have an exemption in the law. So we're almost out of time, but I would like to suggest, and we'll talk more about this next week, that you videotape the noise as it's happening in your home and what your child does and how they react to it. And then maybe we can help you to get some traction with that video so that the Catholic Church will begin to see this, we're making a child be in pain. That's how we can be of use to you. So videotape it. Let's get a really good videotape of what your child is going through in those moments so that we can be talking to the Catholic Church and maybe not changing that law, but maybe they've got to soundproof your home. Maybe they need to be helpful in terms of that. Let's look at some different options that will make it possible for you to live peaceably next to a place that, wants to help other people and be helpful to you in that way. We are out of time, but I want to talk to you a little bit about next week and some of the things going on next week. We will be here starting on Tuesday of next week doing our shows. We've got our usual lineup of our regulars, a very exciting week planned for you, and we're getting into that mode where we're going to start to talk about gift giving. Don't forget that the Holiday Toy Festival is coming up, and make sure that you take a look at the newsletter that you'll be getting a little bit later on today. If you haven't signed up for it already, do it on Facebook today. We're out of time. I will see you on Monday. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.